All right, guys, we're going to do a very, very simple one light setup, and we're going to do this. This is going to be a great shot. We're going to use it. In this case, we have a model helping us. This is Wanderson. He's going to be helping us on this one. And it's going to be very simple, kind of dramatic lighting that I would immediately think of to do for a guy. And then we're going to bring in a reflector and show you how we might fill in if we're shooting a female portrait, and then we're going to do a couple portrait in a minute. So let's look at what we're starting with. The first thing we have is we have a very, very large softbox. Now, why do you want a large softbox? Well, there's two reasons. Number one is the larger the softbox, the softer the light. So big softboxes are great. This particular one is 53 inches. And it's not a tremendously expensive softbox, but it is pretty large. You can buy them. A lot of people make them. This one's an Elinchrom. Scot makes them. Another number of companies make them. So it doesn't really matter which one you buy. But get a good size. Now, we're also using a fairly inexpensive, this is an Elinchrom BX500, or it's called a BXRI 500 watt per second light. It's a very actually inexpensive light. But it does a nice job. The softbox is really the star of this because it doesn't really matter which strobe you use for what we're going to do. You can use any brand that you like. But the star of this, and what really makes this work, is this fantastic softbox. This is a 53-inch Elinchrom MIDI Octa. Now, again, you don't have to buy the Elinchrom. Scot makes them, another bunch of companies make something this size. But the key is the size. The size makes this light really, really soft. In fact, the larger the softbox you get, the softer the wrapping light that you want to get. Now, I could go with an edgier light if I wanted to, but what I'm going to do is we're going to shoot a couple of shots with just him, and then we're going to add a female model into this. We're going to do kind of a lifestyle shot, like this is their home. But of course, we know that it's not because it's a studio in Miami. But you just have to kind of pretend that that fireplace would actually go on if we lit it. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do. We have a very, very simple setup. Now, I want to talk about the camera settings. The camera is set to manual. Anytime I'm using strobes, we're going to set the camera to manual. I will generally start at 1/125th of a second and f5.6, and I'll take a couple of test shots and see where we're at. So that's what my camera settings are. I'm at 200 ISO. We're in manual mode, as I mentioned. How are we triggering the flash? Well, the one thing that I really do like about the Elinchroms and why I use those the most, and that's the strobe up there, is that if you use Elinchroms, you can trigger them with another little Elinchrom product, this Elinchrom Skyport. So why this instead of Pocket Wizards or one of the other ones? Well, here's the deal. If you use an Elinchrom strobe like this with a Skyport, it'll actually not just trigger it wirelessly, but I can control the power of the flash unit from right here on top of my camera. See this little thing? It looks like a little matchbook. This actually controls the power of the flash. So if I needed to go up or down or even fire a test flash, I can do it all right here without ever leaving my camera. I don't have to walk to the back of it and go, it's a little too bright, it's a little too dark. I can control that here. And I'm probably not going to change the camera settings hardly at all. Once I'm going to try to actually raise and lower the light. And what I'm trying to do, again, is to make sure that it kind of balances in here. I don't want it to look like I'm blowing a giant flash into his face. I want it to kind of mix with the ambient light in the room. And shooting at 1/125th of a second will let a little bit of the ambient light in here. I could go probably as high as maybe 1/200th of a second, but I'm going to try to stay at 1/25th, and I might even lower it to 1/60th. If I want to see more light from in here, I'm going to lower the shutter speed, and it'll help bring a little bit of that in. All right, now, let's go ahead and take just a test shot real quick here. All right, here we go. Let's take it. Oh, good, that looks good. All right, let me take a look at the shot. It's actually a little bit bright. It looks a little flashy to me. It looks like, oh, that's some flash. So I can either lower the power of the light. If you look on top of here, you'll see that there's a plus and a minus sign. So I can just hit the minus. Every time I hit the minus sign, it takes the power of the strobe down 1/10 of a stop. So let me take another shot now that I've lowered it much lower here. Let's take a look. Very nice. Good. And let me take a look. All right, that's a little better. If I want it to be a little darker yet, if it's still not balancing quite right, I'm going to go from f5.6, let's jump up to like f8. Let's see what we have up there. Let's take it up a little bit and see if we get a little bit better balance here. Okay, now there we go. That's all we really had to do to dial it in. It looked a little bit too flashy. If it doesn't look real, if it doesn't look natural, it just means you really are powering too much power from the flash. So you're either going to lower the power of the flash, and once you get that as low as it can go, if that's not low enough, then you're going to raise the number of your f-stop. You're going to stop down. So let's say that you're at f5.6, you might go up to 7.1 or up to 8 or wherever you want to go, just a little bit higher, and then just take a test shot and see. Now take a look at, this is what I want to show you. See, over here, I want this side of his face to appear kind of in shadows. I want that side of his face to have the light, and look where the light is. So it's kind of at a 45-degree angle. It's up a little higher. The light's coming in him. I want this side to be lit. I want it to be darker over here. And you can see there's quite a bit of darkness in here. So what happens if I bring in a reflector? I'm going to have my assistant Brad Moore bring in a reflector. Let's put a reflector right up beside him. Let me move back here. And Brad's going to bring in a reflector. Now, if you don't have a Brad, what you can get is this stand right here. So this stand, thank you, Brad. This stand basically holds up a reflector for you. So if you're working by yourself, which most of the time you'll probably wind up being, and I usually am, just go ahead and get the stand. It has 2 clips on it. So it's a light stand, a boom arm, and 2 clips, and it holds it for you. So that way if you're on location and you don't have Brad, hi Brad, how you doing, buddy? This will act as Brad, and it's much less expensive in the long run than Brad. All right, now, so we brought this in here. I'm going to bring it in. Now, I usually want it in nice and close. I'm going to try to get this in as close as I can without it really getting in the shot. Now, since we're shooting studio lighting, thank you, Brad. Since we're shooting studio lighting, I'm going to put the silver side towards him. If I was shooting outside, I would use the gold side of this reflector. And this is a pop-up collapsible reflector. It comes in a small case and it pops open like this. Now, let's take another shot. Let me come back here and take another shot. All right, Wonderson, you ready? Here we go. All right, good. All right, let me maybe sit back a little further in the chair, and let me see if we can really see that reflector here. All right, well, you can see what's happening now. So the light is coming from here. It hits the reflector, and it only has one place to go, back on that side of his face. I personally I like generally to have less of that. I would just leave this off altogether. But for like classical portraiture and things like that, you'll generally want that, and especially perhaps with shots of women. Now today, it is more and more popular to shoot shots of women without that. So we're going to bring in Vanessa, who's another professional model. We're going to have them switch places. So I'm going to have her sit down. He's going to get on the chair. So what would I do to accommodate for adding a second person? One thing we can do is literally just to back the light up, to have the light go back a little bit further to accommodate a little wider range. So you don't have to actually set up a second light because there's a second person. Let me have you back up just a little bit. See how the camera just moves? You just motion like that and it takes off. I love that. All right. Now, let me bring in Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. And have a seat right there. So what I would do is I probably will just move this back just a little bit. Let me just snake it back, cheat it back a little bit further. All righty. I'm going to leave the reflector in there. Now, what am I going to run into when I'm shooting this? Well, one thing is because Wonderson has long hair on one side of his face, if he turns to look too much towards her, the light coming from this light is going to get completely lost. So I'm going to have to direct him a little and say, just kind of keep maybe your hair back. If you look a lot towards her, just be aware of where your hair is. And so you guys, you get in close. See, look at that. I'm not shooting yet. Stop it. Okay, now, let me just get back. We'll take a couple of shots. We're going to leave the reflector in because I do want to bring a little bit of light on the other side of her face. I don't want her to be quite as dark. All right, guys, here we go. Ready? Let's get down a little bit lower. Ooh, this looks pretty good. All right. The light it's a little shadowy on this side of his face, so I'm going to actually kind of pull the light a little. It's a little to the side, so look where the light is and look where they are. Look where they are in relation to the light. The light's kind of hitting them from the side. I really need to move this light a little bit more this way. So I'm just going to kind of pull the light itself this way a little bit, and that's going to help that gap a little bit right in there. Let's just take another test shot now that we've got that moved in here. Here we go. Same thing, guys. All right. So it's still a little dark here, so what I'm going to have you do is, Wonderson, bring your head back a little. Like when you get down low, just keep it not quite as in front of hers. Make sure that you're just a little bit behind her. Okay? So you can get down lower, but just keep your head. There you go. Perfect. Very nice. All right, let's see what we've got. That did it. That fixed it. All right. That's what it just needed. We just needed to kind of bring this right around a little. I would probably bring it around just a little bit more. I would bring it a little bit more in front of them. Just like that, just so there we go, about a 45-degree angle. And you know what? This is going to be the process when you do this. Sometimes moving the light just 1 or 2 inches, you're like, it looks okay, move it a little. It looks all right, move a little. That's it. And so that's what we're kind of doing here. We're just kind of moving around just a little bit here, and I'm trying to make sure that I have most of the light on that side, but I do want some light on both sides of their faces. One more round, guys. Very nice. Good, very good. How are we doing? Lighting looks good. All right, now, Wonderson, I'm going to have you just step off the set for a second, and Vanessa, I'm going to work with you for just 1 minute. I'm going to leave the reflector there for her, but then we're going to take the reflector away. You can see both how it looks on a feminine portrait, okay? So I haven't really changed anything. The thing I probably would do to make her look softer and nicer is I would probably move the light a lot closer. So now it's just one person. We don't need quite as much distance. Let's move this in a little bit closer. She's sitting, so this is a little high. And we can get nice and, that looks pretty good. Let's get nice and close. So let's take a look at the setup here. From where I'm shooting, she has a reflector on this side. I'm going to reposition the reflector. I usually like the reflector just flat right beside the subject. So let me just go ahead and move that if you don't mind. And I also like it a little forward of the subject. So she's here. Let's try not to hit her with it. Something like that I think is pretty good. And let's come back here, give it a shot and see what we've got. I think this looks pretty good. Let's see. Very nice. That looks good. All right, now the whole lighting looks brighter. Why does it look brighter? Because I took the light and I moved it closer to the subject. It just gets brighter. So I have two things I can do, right? I can lower the power of the strobe unit, or I can change my f-stop. Now, I don't need to change my shutter speed, because all I really need to do is change the f-stop. So let me see what my power setting is. I can look on the back of the camera, back of the strobe, and see. I think I'm down all the way this one will go. It's down as far as it's going to go. All right, so I don't have I can't take the strobe power down anymore, so now I have to adjust the camera. I was at f8. Let's try f10. See how that does. Well, that's a good pose. Very nice. Wow, that nailed it. I'm going to actually try f11 and see if that's not too dark. I think it's a little too dark. So that's the answer, f10. Now, of course, we could be using a meter and save a little time like this. But because you've got the LCD on the back of your camera, because it takes just a few seconds, look how little time that we did. Rather than taking the time metering, you can just real quickly look in the back of your thing and adjust this in seconds. Now, again, what we're trying to do is mix this flash with the ambient light inside the room so it's not just blowing a big flash. When I see like a portrait and I look at, like, when I see the flash and I can tell you, oh, the flash is coming from the right, if you can start the sentence with the flash was coming from, you probably use too much flash. So, because it just should look like there's natural light in the room. And looking at this, that looks much better. You don't really see the flash coming from, I mean, you see directional light. And the one thing that I would change here is I would try to get the reflector a little bit closer if you want that. I like the fall off. Let me do that. Let me just remove the reflector completely. Brad's going to jump in here and grab it real quick. We're going to remove the reflector completely and just finish this last shot right here and just let the light fall, the shadows fall on the other side of her face. Let me just take a couple here. See, I like that, but again, this is, this photography, so it's all subject to who's taking it and what you like. But I like the way it's falling off. There's a lot of shadows there, but I think that's a good look. All right, guys, I want to try a variation of what we were doing. I'm using all the same gear. I'm using the same softbox and everything. And what we're going to change is, we're going to change one thing. I'm going to change the lens and my position. So I was shooting with a 70-200, but now I want to try, since we're doing some lifestyle stuff, I want to do almost more of an editorial look. So I'm going to shoot this kind of wide. I'm actually going to shoot this right around 24 millimeters. So the lens I put on here is a 24-70. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get down low. I move the light in a lot closer. So he's sitting down by himself and he's kind of leaning on the front of the chair. So I've moved the light in. I've just moved it in closer and down a little bit lower. All right, he's sitting on the front of the chair, so I need to kind of get down where he is. I'm going to get down on one knee. I'm going to shoot, but here's how I'm going to frame the shot. So I'm going to frame the shot where he's here, and there's just a lot of empty space down that side. So this is like you're shooting for a magazine or something, want more of an editorial look to your thing. Be nice on any kind of wedding or portrait, kind of portraiture too, to get some of the, to really see the location you're shooting your person in. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to get down low. I really have not changed anything on any of the settings on the camera. We're still at 1/125th of a second, and we're at f10. So all I'm going to do is get down here low. All right, Wonderson, you're going to look right over here, and I'm just going to kind of frame it. So watch, I'm locking on his eyes, and then I'm reframing over here for the shot. And it looks good. There's shadows on this side of his face. You can still see a little bit of that eye, so that's still good. You can still see his eye. It's not totally in the dark over there. It looks good. The watch looks good. The watch is the watch is the size of a small car. Here we go. And let's just take a couple more because this looks really good. Really nice. Now, try not to cut off his fingers. Can you close your hand for me a little bit? There we go. Excellent. And that's Oh, we got one light, but it has a really, really nice look. There you go.